Welcome to the Jet Fuel Podcast. It is the end of August. The season is inching closer. Pretty soon, the New York Jets will be kicking off the 2017 season against the Buffalo Bills. But first, we have one more preseason game to play. On this show, we are going to recap the third preseason game, the annual Snoopy Bowl between the New York Jets and the New York Giants. And we will also talk about some of the little moves the Jets have been making throughout the weekend and early this week. Welcome to the Jet Fuel Podcast once again. I am your host, founder, editor-in-chief of nyjetfuel.com, Matt Barbato, joined today by the Jet Fuel three-headed monster, live from College Park, Maryland. It's Max Marcilla and Adam Zielonka, guys. How are you guys doing? You guys getting pumped for the first weekend of college football?
You know it.
It's good to be live from College Park again.
Great to be live from College Park again. I wish I was live from College Park again, but I'll be fine in my humble abode in Chicago. We are here to talk about the annual Snoopy Bowl. The Jets looked like garbage at the beginning and then staged a valiant comeback in a losing effort, 32-31, to the Giants. Now, let's keep in mind, they went for two at the very end, so because you don't really want to go to overtime in the preseason. But it was a pretty good comeback. It was an entertaining game, and a game that sort of, you obviously don't take too much heart into preseason results, but a game that looked kind of dead on arrival. We have it in the budget as a wild Jets-Giants game, and I completely agree. So let's start with where, I feel like we've started the last 17 podcasts. The quarterback situation. Christian Hackenberg once again got the start. Bryce Petty started the second half, then got injured, and Hackenberg came back in. And Josh McCown held the clipboard and was about as useful as I was during my fantasy football draft on Saturday. So, Adam, we'll start with you. You wrote the takeaways on nyjetfuel.com. If you still haven't checked those out, feel free to check it out on the site. How did this game sort of shape your perspective on the quarterback battle? I mean, it seems like the Jets are still making it a three-headed race, but does it really need to be? And who do you think, if you had to pick today, we don't know when Todd Bowles will announce it. It could be as we're recording, so we don't know yet. But who do you think would be the starter for week one against the Bills?
I think the safest bet is to still say that Josh McCown will be the starter for the Jets week one against the Bills. To your point about the three-headed monster, it seems that the Jets have given Christian Hackenberg every opportunity possible to get the reps this preseason and improve himself in this race. And the more he gets these opportunities, the worse off he looks afterwards. This was his worst outing of the preseason. It finally did involve him running some scoring drives, so let's not put that too far down. That's nothing to look down our noses at. He early in the game ran a scoring drive that ended in a Chandler Catanzaro field goal, and at the end of the game, when Bryce Petty was unfortunately removed for his injury, Hackenberg led them in a 2-minute drill down the field and threw a touchdown to Frankie Hammond. But you can't talk about this performance without talking about two other things: his two pick sixes, his two interceptions that were returned for touchdowns, but also how much the first-team offensive line really hindered his ability again to shine. So it's, in my opinion, it should still be McCown, Petty, Hack in that order. I think Bryce Petty, although he was playing against a backup defense, really shone in that game. He made all the right decisions. He went 15 for 18 for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns and a half of football, which you can't do much better than that if you're looking at like a QB rating or a passer rating.
It was perfect.
Which I don't have in front of me. It was perfect
rating, yeah. 158.6.
That's amazing.
158.3, I'm sorry.
And again, we know we have to qualify that with the fact that he did that against Giants' second and third stringers. But he also simply it was night and day. It was night and day between Hackenberg and Petty until Hackenberg had to come in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Now, here's the thing, Adam, and just a quick rebuttal to that. You talked about Hackenberg. You talked about, the offensive line didn't do him any favors. And while I agree, I think the offensive line has been pretty inconsistent over the preseason, especially the first-team offensive line because –
terrible.
But here's the interesting thing, Matt.
Terrible.
Well, we know how you feel, but But Pro Football Focus and John Gatta, they actually disagree. So John Gatta tweeted today that the Jets' offensive line in this preseason has the 5th highest pass blocking efficiency. Now, that's including the backups, the third stringers, the starters, whatever.
Okay.
He also says Hackenberg has been pressured on 28% of his dropbacks. The NFL average is 34. So a little under the NFL average, but under pressure, he's 4 for 9 with 11 yards, an interception, and 6 sacks. That means he takes more sacks when he's under pressure than completing passes. That's checkdowns. That's, passes to a tight end. And that's really the cause for concern. Hackenberg, again, looked really bad. The 2 interceptions were probably the reason why it was his worst preseason game. The first one, staring down his target, it looked like a mistake that a lot of college quarterbacks make, just staring down your read and that pass, Landon Collins. I mean, it's almost like in a cartoon when you have like the dollar signs pop up in your eye. He saw that end zone as soon as Hackenberg threw the ball. And then the second one, not entirely Hackenberg's fault, but still could have placed the ball better. Both were returned for touchdowns, so at least he did get some team on the board. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Jets.
Hey, he got both teams on the board. Let's again be fair. He got both teams on the board.
It's come to
that
this.
Came first.
It's come to snide remarks from Cop Out Marcillo.
We're still keeping that nickname, but that's all right. Yeah, I'll gladly take that nickname. Now, here's the thing. If you're asking me who I would have for the Week 1 starter, I would actually change. I would say Bryce Petty, and here's why. I think, Hackenberg, it's clear that he's not ready to start. He does not look like, not only does not look like an NFL starting quarterback, he hardly looks like an NFL quarterback, period. I think you can't start him. You just can't. I know the Jets aren't planning on winning a ton of games this year. You just still can't start Hackenberg. I do think the Jets will end up starting McCown. I have said that for the entire offseason. I'm sticking to it now. But I would actually like to see Bryce Petty get another chance. He had a couple games at the end of last year. Definitely not great. But you know what? In what seems to be a lost season between injuries and the man-made, trades and releases of the veterans, why not throw another young quarterback in the mix? You want to take a wild card on one? Why not 2? So I wouldn't be upset if the Jets went with Petty. The injury, shook things up, but it seems like he'll be okay.
Okay, let me first. So what's most concerned? So first of all, that Hackenberg dropback stat. You also have to factor in he dropped back 6 times against the Lions in Week 2. I think I disagree with Adam in that I thought Hackenberg played better. He looked better. He looked more comfortable against the Giants, despite the 2 interceptions, than he did against the Lions. The Lions, he looked completely shell-shocked. I mean, it was just, you could tell it was sort of because I would say he played well in the preseason opener against the Titans, and then the Jets tried to open up the offense a little bit more for him against the Lions, and it completely flopped. And will I say he was great? No. But there were some throws he made that I said, okay, that's the NFL arm that scouts raved about when this kid was at Penn State. He seems to be more comfortable on the run than he is in the pocket. And that might be something that just sort of came through circumstances at Penn State. He completely, I don't know. I just felt he looked better in this game than he did against the Lions the week prior. So that's where I disagree with you, Adam. And here's what I'd say about McCown. Yes, it makes the most sense to probably start McCown if you're factoring in, okay, what gives the Jets the best chance of winning. I know they don't have a very high, percentage of winning in any of their games this year. They're not going to be favored by any means, but in terms of, who's the guy who could give Todd Bowles the best chance to win on a week-to-week basis, I'd say McCown. But then you raise the counterpoint of, well, then how can you start a guy who hasn't, seen any game action since the first series of the first preseason game? So you would think if the Jets had any interest in starting McCown, he would have played in that game. And I don't know. That's what makes me think they're going to go with Bryce Petty. And, yes, Bryce Petty looked good. I was impressed. And like Max said, stark difference between him and Hackenberg. I mean, just the way Petty processes the game, sees things before the snap, sees things. Hackenberg's got his eyes dialed in on his first read. Other than that, it's either a scramble, a throwaway, or a turnover or a sack. Petty, you have more chances to compete with him under center. My thing is, I think McCown's probably the better choice too. I'm leaning Petty now because the Jets haven't played McCown in 2 weeks, and he's been sort of practice. We talked about that a lot last week, where he didn't really get many reps, if any. So how can you justify starting McCown when he hasn't played? He's played one preseason series, and I understand he's a 38-year-old veteran and all that, but geez, you'd think he'd like to work on building some camaraderie with the receivers he has. It doesn't make sense to me to start McCown, but the Jets have just sort of botched this entire thing from the get-go. And like you said at the very beginning, Adam, they have given Hackenberg every opportunity on earth to go out and show them something, but he hasn't. And in fact, he's shown more of what he can't do rather than what he can do. So I don't know. That's my caution. I mean, Petty's looked good. McCown gives you the best chance to win. Hackenberg probably shouldn't see the field for at least a few weeks. But how do you play McCown given the layoff he's had?
Yeah, and I mean, that's, I think, the best explanation I could give, and because, of course, Todd Bowles won't give an explanation as to why McCown isn't playing. Again, no injury, no soreness, they haven't said anything. From all accounts, he's completely healthy.
I saw a rumor he had a fatigued arm. That's one thing I did see, but that hasn't been confirmed.
Here's what I know, Matt. I feel like, again, speculation. The reason why McCown hasn't played is the Jets are trying to give Hackenberg a chance. Adam, you mentioned it. They have given him every single chance. Go back to the first week, he got the second drive of the first week of the preseason. So he was instantly in. Week 2, he started and played the entire half. Week 3, he started and played the entire half. The difference between week 2 and 3 is that I would argue the Giants' defense is much better than the Lions, first of all. And second of all, the Jets actually started what I would presume to be their actual starting offensive line. If you recall, in week 2, they kind of mixed and matched. They had Zielonka instead of Beachum in there.
That's true.
The Jets, week 3, starting 10, excluding Hackenberg, that's probably their week 1 lineup. And the fact that the Jets gave Hackenberg that chance against a good defense, gave him an entire half for the second straight week, I really think the reason McCown hasn't played is because the Jets are trying to give Hackenberg any chance for him to do something, and he just hasn't.
Let's quickly rattle off the receiving stats from the starters. So you had Austin Seferian-Jenkins with 1 catch for 16 yards. You had Robbie Anderson with 1 catch for 9 yards. Jalen Marshall, 1 catch, 9 yards. I don't see Sharon Peak on the box score. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I get that they're trying to give Hackenberg the best look, but it seems like it's odd to me how it seems like the best receivers have been the rookies are Darius Stewart and Chad Hansen, and then guys like Frankie Hammond, guys who've been playing late. Do you think that plays a role in Hackenberg's struggles, or?
Sorry, I didn't catch what you were saying. Oh, the receivers?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the box score because you were mentioning just how this is the look the Jets are going with, with these first 10 guys. That's what Max said. I mean, is there what do you think it's the lack of production from the receivers? Is that the receivers are bad, or do you think it's more because Hackenberg's bad? I know it's sort of a pivoting angle, but just something that I sort of – because it's like you think, okay, well, what's his supporting cast? And it's not much, but the quarterback's not much either. So what can explain these struggles? Is it the line? Is it the receivers? Is it him?
There's blame to go around. I want to say that there's blame to go around to all units, from the offensive line to the receivers being, we can agree, one of the least talented units, or the least proven units, I guess would be fair to say, in the league. And don't forget that until this week, we didn't have our starting running back, Matt Forte, taking any carries, and then he played the entire first half this week. Bilal Powell didn't play until
another really weird decision.
Forte had been still, at least we had an injury on record for Forte that he was still recovering from. Anyway, it's not good for Hackenberg's development. You know how I feel about that. It's not good for Hackenberg's development where Robbie Anderson is the best target he can throw to, or Seferian-Jenkins is the best target he can throw to. But since we brought up the receivers, I do want to shine a light on the two rookies the Jets drafted in the 3rd and 4th rounds this spring, Darius Stewart out of Alabama and Chad Hansen out of Cal, because they had, each of them, the best games that they've had all preseason. Even though a lot of it, including Stewart's 2 touchdown receptions, came with Petty in the second half, they did get more playing time with the first team offense for the first time in the preseason. When we went to camp, we didn't see them get very many looks with the first teamers, and throughout the preseason, they were not getting any looks from the first teamers through the first 2 games. They each had a catch in the first half. They were both good catches. And I think that that's promising. I think that if both of them can be contributors for whoever's the starting quarterback on this team, that will be better than if they're not ready or they were busts or who knows, and you're just going forward with peak Jalen Marshall after a suspension, Robbie Anderson, and not much else.
Trying to find a silver lining. I mean, Jets offense, wide receivers, the 2 rookies looked very good. I liked what I saw out of Chad Hansen and Darius Stewart. It was, I'm not going to say odd, because the reason why the Jets didn't give those 2 significant playing time, especially in the first half of games previously in the preseason, you want them to develop and you want them to get their crack against, the backup defenses of other teams. But, when times called, they had their opportunity, and they both looked really good. They both had, toe drag swag catches, as they're known now. And I think they looked good. And I think as the season progresses, and you see this throughout the NFL with many, many different positions, but you give those mid-round rookies who show something either in the preseason or in a reserve role in a regular season, you give them a chance to start as the season goes along. So I do think at least the Jets maybe have like a 4th or 5th wide receiver in Hansen and or Stewart. But I mean, other than that, you want to talk about not helping each other out. The offensive line doesn't help the quarterback. The quarterback doesn't help the wide receivers. I mean, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is a vicious cycle. It's a good way of describing it. But at least you're seeing some sort of upside with, I thought Chad Hansen, I posted a GIF of the play to the Jet Fuel Twitter account at New York Jet Fuel. He and Hackenberg made a really nice play on a comeback route down the sideline where you could just tell Hansen, he ran a great route, was able to gain separation from the defender. He had like 3 or 4 yards between them. And Hackenberg managed to put the ball right where he needed to, threw it right at the exact perfect moment. It's a really nice completion. And then Stewart, one of those touchdowns, the Giants completely forgot about him. But, that other one was a really nice pitch and catch too. So, yeah, there's some upside in the receiver corps at least. But you're not seeing much from the guys like Robbie Anderson, Jalen Marshall, Sharon Peak like you had hoped. That is a little disappointing. Let's move on to some of the moves. The Jets have been just like a turnstile for personnel moves lately. So let's try and get it all straight here. So this weekend, they traded Dexter McDougal to Philadelphia for safety Brandon. Is his first name Brandon? Terrence
Brooks.
Terrence Brooks. They signed Coney Ely off of waivers.
I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. Josh McCown is the Jets' Week 1 starter.
Oh, look at that. Who's right and who's wrong?
Wow.
I didn't speak up and defend myself, but look who's right. Josh
Bob
McCown.
Bowles, after practice today, announced the Jets will be led by Josh McCown in Week 1. He said he has the best grasp of the offense. Did not name a number 2 quarterback, however.
Permission to gloat? Can I go first?
Gloat, but what? But how that? Go ahead, Ed.
Because even though he didn't run the Jets offense very much in preseason action, 2 things. He got the majority of the first team reps in practice, more so than Hackenberg and absolutely more so than Petty. The other thing is that Josh McCown's 37 years old and he's played for a dozen teams and he can pick up any offense. He's played in a similar West Coast offense in the past, and it's not that difficult to imagine him picking this up and running with it Week 1 against a shaky Buffalo team. You don't need to put Hackenberg out there. We also don't know exactly how bad Bryce Petty's sprain is. They said he'll be ready for Week 1,
right? But
that's another thing we didn't even talk about in the previous segment was how he did get injured at the very end of last Saturday's game. All right, so I'm not super thrilled, but this is where we are. When Josh McCown was signed in free agency, this is sort of where we expect it to be, right? Until let me ask you both this. Until 2 weeks ago, McCown played one drive only in the first preseason game. So before 2 weeks ago, did either of you fathom Bryce Petty would be who we're banging the table for today on August 28th? Because I don't think so. Because he's gotten no first-team reps. How could you name him the starter when he hasn't had any first-team reps?
No, I hear that. I completely hear that. I do. I've been saying all along, you got to go with McCown. They should have ended. I mean, I wrote a column about this, saying that they need to end this charade. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
My thing is, how in the hell can you start a guy who has played one series of preseason action? I don't care. Yes, practice is important. It's I don't know. I don't understand the way they planned out I understand if you want to start Hackenberg. I get that. You want to see what the kids got. I think our show plan probably
they gave him every chance. They probably were begging for a reason to be able to justify starting in week 1 that they did, and they had McCown. They figured McCown was in their back pocket, and now preseason's not over. The reason here's my theory. Here's the reason that they're announcing this today in between preseason games is now they'll probably give McCown more snaps against the Eagles on Thursday.
See, but isn't that stupid? I mean, that's not when you're supposed to be playing your starting quarterback.
No, you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't do that. I think I don't know if I go as far to say stupid. No, it's unconventional for sure. I hesitate to because we know, or we think we know, what they were trying to do behind the scenes by giving Hackenberg an advantage, essentially getting him more reps and giving him more of a chance than anybody else. It fits that formula. It fits what logically follows now is that they decided after 3 weeks, we can't take this with Hack. He's not ready. We're going to move on with McCown and have Petty ready. Having Bryce Petty ready, not injured anymore when he fully recovers from his MCL sprain, which I believe is what the injury was, and giving him a little more chance in practice and listing him as the number 2, because that's my next prediction is they're not going to put him behind Hack. I think they'll list Petty as the number 2.
Depending on the injury, and I'm curious if that enrolling it. I'm curious if that enrolling it.
We need some time to grasp it, but we this is live television, right? We're recording a podcast.
Yeah, we are. This is not fake at all. We've lost Max. He's writing a story.
Yeah, Max has jumped off the podcast. For those of you listening at home,
Max died. He's gone. We're reacting live to this, and I get what you're saying, Adam. I really do. And like I said, I've been pounding the table for them to just start McCown and end this. But I think they should have ended it after the second preseason game. I think McCown should have gotten the bulk of the reps. If he only played a half on Saturday, kind of split up the second half between Hackenberg and Petty, fine, completely fine. But it's not the decision I don't like; it's the means to which they got there. It's how they got there.
It's
because listen, I understand Josh McCown is 38. I understand he's been in the league for 20,000 years. I get all of that. But you are with a team that has a bunch of young, unproven, unseasoned receivers, and you have an offensive line that you'd like to know, what kind of production you're going to be looking at throughout the season for as long as you're starting. I just think it's a killer in terms of a chemistry building, camaraderie. People say that's an overrated argument, but it really is. I mean, you'll see the New England Patriots without Julian Edelman this year, and that'll hurt because Tom Brady and Julian Edelman have this symmetry that you just cannot match on other level, on other teams. And no player can sort of replace that. And I'm not saying that Josh McCown is Tom Brady. Hell no. He wouldn't be on the New York Jets if he was Tom Brady. But I don't know how this helps you win because you haven't given him enough time to prepare. And I
don't know if it may not help the Jets win, but it might help them not lose as badly. And to your point earlier about receivers, they're probably going to get more out of Josh McCown throwing them the ball. Not from a chemistry standpoint if we see McCown as what he most likely is, a one-year rental. But I think that will actually help your rookie receivers a little better than sending them out with either Hack or, for that matter, Petty.
Yeah, I guess I just I don't understand the means of it. I just don't understand the means at which they
to
did
the end.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's just
I'm getting to be at peace with it on my end.
Listen, I knew you could tell. My biggest fear. Here was my greatest fear. Worse than this was they were going to roll Hackenberg out there.
Oh God,
that was my big fear, that they were going to throw him out there because they've been throwing him out there for the preseason. Why not just give him a shot? So okay, we have that answer. How do you think they proceed with the fourth preseason game? Because there is some chatter. I guess Bulls didn't rule out the possibility of the Jets playing their starters for the fourth preseason game, which is just ludicrous. It's stupid. It really is stupid. You're done. The preseason's over. This was the first 3 games is when you're supposed to get your tune-up for the regular season, not the fourth one. How do you think they handle it? How do you think they handle Thursday night against Philly?
Well, I don't know what you feel about the future of preseason NFL football, if we should shorten it from 4 games down, and I think we should. But, if to be really devil's advocate to your point, I think they almost used the length of the preseason to their advantage almost in a clever way. It's like we have all these exhibition games, give Hackenberg as much of a chance as possible. Now, to answer your question about Thursday, now that they still have one more game, it's weird to play that fourth game with a bunch of starters. Definitely, you don't put McCown out there and not put the best offensive line together that you can. No matter what the Jets put together, it's not a very good offensive line. But you don't pull a Rex and Sanchez move and put a starting quarterback behind a slapshod, bunch of rookies or bunch of undrafted guys, offensive line. You got to give him. This is where Bulls would lose me if he doesn't do this. Bulls and the whole staff would lose me if they don't give the whole starting offense with Josh McCown the first quarter against Philadelphia.
Wow.
They got to do that now. It's weird. I know it's weird.
Powell's going to blow out his knee.
Oh, don't say that.
But it's possible.
We haven't even talked about the other big injury on this team yet because of all the other news. Leonard Williams, we don't know yet for sure how.
Oh, he has a sprained wrist.
Or not serious sprain. His sprains come in different sizes. I think it's better than broken hand.
I think that's an injury a defensive lineman can. I think that's an injury defensive lineman can play with.
Okay.
Personally.
Well, I was worried, and we were about to get to all the different transactions that happened.
Well, I think that's postponed.
The timing of the Jets signing Coney off waivers right the day after Leonard Williams at the same position left with a wrist injury did worry me. But we can talk about that if you want. We probably aren't done talking about McCown and the official decision here today. It's nothing like, I want to compare this really quick to the rest of the league. It's nothing like the announcement from the Cleveland Browns recently that they're going to go straight ahead with Deshaun Kaiser, a second-round draft pick, who we didn't even think very highly of when we were doing our own evaluations coming out. Yet the Cleveland Browns organization is ready to start him under center week 1.
That was a guy
ready.
That
was the old man who used to play for the Cleveland Browns. Week 5, by the way, is going to be fantastic when the Jets play the Browns.
Week 1's going to be fantastic. The Bills are a dumpster fire too.
Yeah, when we are saying fantastic in this sense, by the way, for those of you listening at home, we mean the opposite of what that word generally connotes.
If you're a glutton for punishment,
fantastically awful. Fantastic. Glutton for punishment. If you're a Jets fan, you're listening, so you are a glutton for punishment.
It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet at CC's. It's just like, there's substance, it's in your stomach, but then when you sit down later that night, you're just going to feel awful about yourself. So, I lost. It's crazy. I mean, it's just, I don't even know what I was going to say. I have lost my train of thought. Oh, that was a tweet I had on Deshaun Kaiser. That was a tweet I had just saying, okay, it's kind of crazy that a guy who people were saying before he was coming out, he should stay in school. His own head coach at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly, said he should stay in school. And he's starting for a team that you could argue has been rivaling the Jets for the most dysfunctional in the league the past 3 years in Cleveland. I mean, that's just kind of wild to me. And I would say Deshaun Kaiser beat out better competition than Josh McCown had or Christian Hackenberg was going up against. I mean, Brock Osweiler is kind of bad, but at least he has started at the professional level. And, Cody Kessler's not a bad prospect either. I'd say he's a little bit better than Bryce Petty. So
right, exactly.
That's just, it speaks to how underdeveloped and how shattered Christian Hackenberg was as a prospect. And it speaks to just how far Mike Maccagnan reached to draft him. And right now, it's looking like a colossal mistake.
I have to agree. And it's the curse of the second round. The Jets' second-round picks for the last several years have been busts in every way imaginable, from Jason Morrow to Devin Smith, who, not to entirely his fault because of how injured he always is. Hackenberg was a second-rounder. The two guys I just named before are not on the active roster. Devin Smith technically is on IR and still listed, but the second round is not a place you can swing and miss, and they consistently have done that. But back to John Idzik and before him, Maccagnan's first second-round pick was Christian Hackenberg. Now, this year they picked Marcus May, safety, which we were just surprised about following another safety, Jamal Adams. So maybe that might be the bright spot of the Jets this year, is to see these two young safeties develop. But as far as second-round picks, that's why I got on that topic. Christian Hackenberg, 52nd overall or 50th overall. It's not looking good so far. It hasn't looked good. It will continue to look bad. It's like you got to fix a quarterback. Let's look at this in a more macro view. It's like you have to fix a quarterback. He's had, I believe, 5 offensive coordinators in the last 6 years, dating back to his freshman year at Penn State. Something to that effect. I should look that up instead of just saying things.
Yeah, well, he had Bill O'Brien, then he had James Franklin, then he came to the NFL, he had Chan Gailey, and now he's got John Morton. So 4 out of 5, yeah. 4 out of 5, because he had James Franklin for his last 2 years at Penn State.
Yeah, you're naming his head coaches there, though. James Franklin and Bill O'Brien.
Oh, but I'm thinking
they also changed out a couple of offensive coordinators.
Oh, did Penn State change coordinators too?
Oh yeah.
Well,
this problem is dated back. Yeah,
I know Penn State changed their coordinator entering last season. I don't know. I think it was the same guy for James Franklin's too. But either way, it's been a lot of, and it's not even the changes in offenses. I mean, we've seen that can have an effect on a quarterback's development. It's just, like I said earlier before this news broke, when you watch Hackenberg, he looks more confident when he's rolling out or scrambling than he does when he's standing in the pocket. And there could be a ton of pressure. There could be no pressure. It just looks like his whatever sort of pedigree he had built up as a prospect entering college, his first season, it's completely broken. And it was broken by his decision to stay at Penn State amidst the the turmoil at that school following the Jerry Sandusky stuff. He was playing behind high school caliber talent, and that will create bad habits. And you can still see some of those habits are emerging. And that's part of the reason why, it's a big reason why he didn't get the job. Because as I've said so many times, if you really watch Hackenberg's head and try and get a look at his eyes, he's staring at his first guy every time. It's how he got picked off on that intended pass that was picked off by Landon Collins. You watch that. It's even sicker in slow motion, where you just see him staring down Tomlinson in the flat. And Landon Collins, I mean, he's only, a second or third year player. He's a great player. I mean, that's one of the easiest picks Landon Collins will ever get in his career. We have Max back.
Adam, yeah. I don't want to interrupt Max's return. He just he took a break from the podcast to write and share the news on Twitter. I wanted to say, since you were talking about Hackenberg's vision, do you remember that one year of the Madden series where they had the quarterback vision stat, which really you as the player could see the entire field, but your quarterback's awareness essentially determined where he was looking, and it could be very wide. Right. It was one of the years Michael Vick was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and his was the entire field.
Yeah. So was Peyton
Manning. I'm saying this because I'm imagining Hackenberg's to be almost narrow to the point where you wouldn't be able to see the light on the screen. It would be a little line or something. He has such narrow vision.
And you can only hit one button.
Yeah, because he doesn't see.
You can only hit the X button.
Yeah, Landon Collins. If you can't see Landon Collins on that interception, it's not that he was far away. He was lurking kind of close, and he ran right in when the time was right. And that's a big failure on Hackenberg. Another thing, since we were talking about the offensive line earlier, Hackenberg was not under immense pressure on that play. Just like against the Lions,
No.
he was not under any sort of intense pressure when he threw the ball directly into the ground in front of him. I think maybe he was trying to tuck it at that point, but there are plays that do show it's not just missed blocks that are bringing this guy back.
I'm really glad I'm joining the show when we're talking about Madden drills, because the best one was always the running back drill. When you had like the 2 or 3 offensive linemen, you had to go through the cones, pick up 20 yards and score. And each time you scored, you would move a couple yards back. Clearly that's the most important news now, right, guys?
Yeah, I need to pick up a PS4 somehow and get Madden 18.
Thoughts
Actually,
on the
I will
long
skip this
shot
year
mode?
because of Brady. I don't want to buy the thing this year with Brady on the cover. I would have gotten Gronk, but not Brady. Next year we'll see.
Here's the thing, guys, and I know you guys gave your take on the quarterback situation as it's unfolding by the second. Like I was saying earlier in the show, you asked me who I would start. I probably would side with Petty, but I don't disagree with this decision. I do disagree with how they've handled it. Not that they took so long to announce it, because that's, typical Jets fashion. Typically, you don't hear who's the starting quarterback until almost the entire preseason is over. What is surprising to me, and you guys touched on it, is why the heck he has played one drive into preseason, and that was the first drive, and he hasn't touched the field since then. Look,
that's what I said.
I know. He's a 38-year-old journeyman. He's played with many receivers. He's played with many coordinators. He's played behind many offensive lines. He's played in many different uniforms in many different stadiums. I get it. But here's the thing. He has not worked with Robbie Anderson. He has not worked with Sharon Peake. He has not worked with go through any of the pass catchers on the Jets roster. Not only because it's his first year with the Jets, but also because these guys are all so young. The most experienced guy is Kenbrell Tompkins now. And he has the most receiving yards out of anyone. He barely has over 1,000, if I'm not mistaken. So, this is such an inexperienced team. Offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends. The one veteran player they do have is the quarterback, but they're not giving him a chance to gel with the guys. I know he's played with many different players, but why not give him that extra chance, extra time? I know they wanted to see Hackenberg, and I said that's truly what I think the reason was, is they wanted to give Hackenberg the chance. But to now potentially throw McCown out in week 4, which, by the way, we still don't know. Bowles did not reveal any quarterback game plan for week 4 against Philadelphia. But it's just baffling, the fact that the Jets may give their starting quarterback one drive. I mean, every single team in the NFL has given their starting quarterback more than one drive. I mean, has Tom Brady played a drive?
Yeah, he killed you watch him against the Lions on Saturday or Friday, he was automatic.
And that is the greatest quarterback of all time with many of his same weapons. And the Patriots still give him a chance to go out with the first team. I just don't get why they didn't give McCown a chance. Like I said, I feel like I understand the rationale behind it, but I still don't understand it.
Well, Max, I was telling this to Matt a little bit before, and I really want to make sure we use the proper tenses and remember how time is linear. Let me start sounding like Pablo Torre trying to dissect a football thing. The time is a linear thing, and it's not over yet. The preseason is not over yet. Like I said to Matt earlier, Bulls will lose me if they say that Hack or Petty will start against Philly, and McCown's going to hold a clipboard one more game. Then it's indefensible. I don't mean to say all of this to defend everything they've done. This could very easily backfire in their faces. I don't know how we'll judge that, because we're looking at a team that might win one game or they might win 2, and how to judge what is contributing to what will be a problem for us later. But time is linear, and there is still 2 weeks until game day against the Buffalo Bills. So there's one preseason game left, and I know Matt laughed aloud when I said they really should give him a full quarter with the first team offense. I know that's not how it's done.
Outrageous,
Matthew. I don't disagree, and I don't defend what they're doing, but it would be more outrageous if they didn't give him any time against Philadelphia. And then after that, they're still practicing. Camp is over, quote unquote camp is over, but they are still going to practice plenty before the Bills game. There's a lot of that's game planning, and I'd say arguably that's more important. Max, to your point earlier about the receivers, we went to practices. You went to way more than I did. It's not like McCown's never met Robbie Anderson and Sharon Peake. They've worked together in practice. I know it's different than facing another defense on the other side of the field, but it's going to be ugly no matter what they choose to do. So why not this path?
I think my point is I agree with the path. I agree. Not necessarily I agree, but I did expect to see Josh McCown as the starter. I think what's confusing, and we've brought it up, is why hasn't he gotten the chances? Is it because the Jets simply know what they're getting out of him? And yes, that's the answer. But why aren't they saying it? Why didn't they say it? Why didn't they come out and say, why didn't Todd Bowles come out and say, well, we know what we have in Josh McCown. We're going to give Petty and Hackenberg opportunities to see if they can overtake him. But McCown is the heavy favorite to be the starter. And even in that case, I would still think you give Josh McCown a couple snaps, even if it's in a backup role. I mean, now the guy, if he doesn't play in week 4, he'll go a month without throwing a snap in a football game against another team, and then he'll open the season. Now, luckily for him, it's against the Buffalo Bills. And maybe not so luckily for the Jets fans that want the tank, because I could legitimately see the Jets starting off the season 1-0, and that's crazy to think about, considering the Jets have gotten rid of almost every single veteran who's good on their team, excluding Matt Forte. I mean, name someone else who's left. It's crazy, and the Jets might be favored week 1.
I don't understand the means to this decision. Like I've said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but someone explain to me how it makes sense to not give him more reps. I can't risk my starting offense in the 4th preseason game, Adam. And I'll ask you this: what is there to be gained starting Josh McCown and the Jets starting offense against Philadelphia's probably 2nd or 3rd stringers?
I don't know who's Philadelphia's going to play, and that's out of the Jets' control. But expand your mind and horizons just a little bit. The 4th preseason game is as valuable as the 1st preseason game. Just because we're so used to a 4 preseason game schedule where by the end of the month of August or early September, you know what you've got. That's not how the Jets did things this year. And I'm not saying that that's defensible. I think it could very well backfire. I don't want there to be any injuries Thursday. None of us do. But this isn't going to cause injuries. And there's probably a catastrophe scenario. There's probably a worst case scenario of some injury that we're not talking about.
Paul gets hurt.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say is your biggest, or McCown gets hurt, and that maybe that's your biggest risk. But
but then still consider that end of month or early month, or if they're playing a game in May, that's all exhibitions and they're of equal value. That McCown could have got hurt on that first snap against Tennessee.
I just think it's goofy. I just think the whole situation is goofy. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, again, why should we? I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised by this regime, by this coaching staff, by this front office. I guess in the end, what it comes down to was Christian Hackenberg was given the chance, and he squandered it. And he is very far from playing an NFL game. I mean, listen, there is arm talent. I saw it when I was watching the film Saturday against the Giants. There is arm talent there, but from a mental standpoint, he does not process the game nearly as fast as he needs to. And I'm curious. Well, maybe we'll wrap up this subject on this. How much do you think Bryce Petty's knee injury plays into this? If Bryce Petty is fully healthy, I know the grade 1 MCL sprain is not serious, but if Bryce Petty's fully healthy and you're not just pretty sure, but you know you'll have him for the opening game against the Bills, how much do you think that injury, did it play a role in this decision at all? Max, why don't you start since you've been sort of away the longest?
I'm going to say not at all, or very minimally. I think ultimately, if I could sum up my thoughts on this in a sentence or two, this is the decision that we have known is coming, that we have really expected for the last couple of weeks. But honestly, since McCown signed, all signs were pointing toward McCown starting. We were waiting for this decision, and the reason why everyone's going crazy, including us, is because the way they got there has been so bizarre. And it's worth noting how strange it's been. But also at the end of the day, I think this was the decision the Jets were going to make regardless, unless one of Petty or Hackenberg blew the coaching staff out of the water. I don't think the Jets were going in any different way.
Adam, your thoughts?
I would largely agree with what Max has just said, and I would say, if Petty didn't get injured at the very end of Saturday's game, that might be because he did blow some of us away. He had a perfect passer rating. I don't know how much better you could do than that with 3 touchdowns. It would, I think, if I were a coach, it would make me think a little bit harder about this and remember back to the times that Petty did have starting experience as the quarterback of the Jets, and McCown doesn't. And I would probably question it a little harder, but I still understand the decision for McCown. And the Jets are in a no-win situation no matter what they do. We will criticize them no matter what they do. They'll be criticized roundly across New York and New Jersey no matter what they do. And that's sort of what it's like to be a team that's obviously tanking but won't own up to it.
Yeah, they've put themselves in this situation. They're gonna deal with the consequences because this team's not going to be very good. They're going to win fewer than 4 games, and the quarterback play is going to be a big reason why. And okay, let's wrap up with this very quickly. Based on what you've seen in the preseason thus far, when, if you think yes, do we see Christian Hackenberg? Does your opinion change based on what you've seen, or do you still think along the same lines he needs a lot of time to develop?
So sorry, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying there. Do
you think from what we've seen from Hackenberg, does it change the timetable of when we should maybe see him in an NFL regular season game?
No, because that's going to mostly be based on the Jets' record and how it progresses throughout the fall, I think. Once we can definitively say this team has a better chance of being number 1 overall draft pick as opposed to being a playoff team, which will probably come in middle of October. You don't start Josh McCown for 16 games, and Hackenberg needs the reps no matter what. You just can't start him out there yet. He needs more time. He needs to watch and learn and be a good boy with the clipboard on the sideline. So I don't think it changed the timetable.
I agree there with you, Adam. I do think that the only thing that Christian Hackenberg's preseason performance may alter is the backup quarterback. Let's say McCown gets injured in the early weeks while he's still the starter. Who do the Jets turn to? And right now, I know Bowles didn't announce it. He will not say. He says the Jets have not concluded anything. But, barring a tremendous week 4 resurgence from Hackenberg, I think that clearly goes to Petty as the number 2. So I think that's really the only thing Hackenberg's preseason performance has told us for sure.
Okay, what about Petty? Do you think Petty should get a shot to start before Hackenberg? I think that's the new question now.
I agree. I think that's the new question. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but you know what I said earlier, that I would start Petty week 1 because I think it would be more valuable for the Jets as a franchise to see what they have in both Petty and Hackenberg this year, giving them both starts, than to see McCown and then go straight to Hackenberg and just disregard Petty after 4 games last year. Because clearly he made some improvements. He looked much better in the preseason game against the Giants. But at the end of the day, I still, if I were to predict, I would still think the Jets go McCown as the starter with the backup being Petty in case of injury. And as soon as the record indicates or the offense's progression indicates or Hackenberg's progression indicates, the Jets go straight to Hackenberg.
I guess. This is a terrible situation, and we're trying to wrap our minds around it. So if you happen to be watching this live, you don't know what we're talking about. The Jets have named Josh McCown the starting quarterback. We had a really elaborate podcast planned out with a great topics to talk about, and this news broke midway through the show. So we have tried to scramble to react to it, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Want to thank the Jet Fuel 3-Headed Monster, 2 of which are live from College Park in Maryland. Got Max Marcilla. Follow him on Twitter at mmarcilla98. You got Adam Zielonka. He's at Adam_Zielonka. You've got me at Real Matt Barbato. And, of course, you're going to want to follow the site. If you haven't already, you're crazy, but you're going to want to follow it probably in the next 2 minutes. At New York Jet Fuel, we are going to have plenty of reaction to this decision. Josh McCown will be the Week 1 starter despite not playing since the first series of the first preseason game. Yes, it is mind-boggling. Yes, it is probably the right decision in the end, but it still doesn't make any sense because it's the New York Jets. Thank you very much for listening to this wacky version of the Jet Fuel podcast, and we will talk to you again real soon. This has been the Jet Fuel Podcast.